Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki, ISKCON Shankaracharya Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantharaj Srila Bhagavatam ki, Shri Shri Radha Ramanuj ki, Shri Giri Govardhana ki, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Sankirtan Yajna ki, Govardhana ki, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga, all glories to Sri Prabhupada. Now could we just turn this? Just turn this. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are reading today from Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 4, Chapter 12. Just let me get with it here. Canto 4, Chapter 12. Dhruva Maharaj goes back to Godhead. And today we are reading verse 30. We've got access to, Tadotanapada Putro Dadarshantakam Agatam Mrityor Murdne Padam Datva Arurohadbhutam Griham Tadotanapada Putro Darshantakam Agatam Mrityo Murdni Padam Datva Arurohad Bhutam Griham Tadotana Pada Putro Darshantakam Agatam Mrityo Murdni Padam Datva Arurohad Bhutam Griham Tadotana Pada Putro Darshantakam Agatam Mrityo Murdni Padam Datva Arurohad Bhutam Griham. Yeah. Tada, then Uttanapada of King Uttanapada, Putra, son, Tadarsha, could see unto come death personified. Agatam approached him. Mrityo Murdni, on the head of death. Padam, feet. Datva, placing. Ariroha, got up. Adbhutam, wonderful. Griham, on the airplane which resembled a big house. Anyone seen my hat? Where did I put it? On here. Not in my pocket. Anyway, we will continue. Translation. When Dhruva Maharaj was attempting to get on the transcendental plane, he saw death personified approach him. Not caring for death, however, he took advantage of the opportunity to put his feet on the head of death, and thus he got up on the airplane, which was as big as a house. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. To take the passing away of a devotee and the passing away of a non-devotee as one and the same is completely misleading. While ascending the transcendental airplane, Dhruva Maharaj suddenly saw death personified before him, but he was not afraid. Instead of death's giving him trouble, Dhruva Maharaj took advantage of death's presence and put his feet on the head of death. People with a poor fund of knowledge do not know the difference between the death of a devotee and the death of a non-devotee. In this connection, an example can be given. A cat carries its kittens in its mouth, and it also catches a rat in its mouth. Superficially, the catching of the rat and the kitten appear to be one and the same, but actually they're not. When the cat catches the rat in its mouth, it means death for the rat. Whereas when the cat catches the kitten enjoys it. When Dhruva Maharaj boarded the airplane, he took advantage of the arrival of death personified, who came to offer him obeisances. Putting his feet on the head of death, he got up on the unique airplane, which is described here to be as big as a house, Griham. There are many other similar instances in Bhagavad literature. It is stated that when Kardama Muni created an airplane to carry his wife Devahuti all over the universe, the airplane was like a big city. Excuse me. It is stated that when Kardama Muni created an airplane to carry his wife Devahuti all over the universe, the airplane was like a big city, carrying many houses, lakes, and gardens. Modern scientists have manufactured big airplanes, but they're packed with passengers who experience all sorts of discomforts while riding in them. Material scientists are not even perfect in manufacturing a material airplane. In order to compare to the plane used by Karadama or the plane sent from Vishnu Loka, they must manufacture an airplane equipped like a big city with all the comforts of life, lakes, gardens, parks, etc. Their plane must be able to fly in outer space and hover and visit all other planets. If they invent such a plane, they will not have to make different space stations for fuel to travel into outer space. Such a plane would have an unlimited supply of fuel, or, like the plane from Vishnu Loka, would fly without it. Tadotana pada putro tadarshantakam agatam mrityomuragni padam datva aruro hadbutam griham. When Dhruva Maharaj was attempting to get on the transcendental plane, he saw death personified approach him. Not caring for death, however, he took advantage of the opportunity to put his feet on the head of death, and thus he got up on the airplane, which was as big as a house. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Bhastucha Deshatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchkalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Yes, so this is quite an interesting part of this great story, this great account of Dhruva Maharaj going back to Godhead, that he came out to get on this amazing, totally superhuman type of airplane. But then death came in between him and the airplane, and having heard devotees talk about this particular incident on a number of occasions in classes and here and there, oftentimes the devotees take it that death was trying to obstruct Dhruva and stop him from getting onto the Vaikuntha airplane. In other words, to stop him going back to Godhead. Another obstacle, a final obstacle, when after how many obstacles in the course of a devotee's life, trying to prepare themselves for going back to Godhead, right at this very last moment, suddenly death comes in the way and tries to stop the devotee and keep the devotee in the material world. But actually Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport here that death was not trying to do that. Death is a devotee. Death is some sort of demigod-related entity, something of that sort. Later on, there's descriptions of the family of death, different people like old age, pain, and things like this. These are all family members of death. The person, or described here as death personified, but in other words, someone who, under the supervision of Yamaraj, is killing people. So, but in this case, because death personified is a devotee, yes, and he understands so much about these things. So when death personified saw that, look, this is Dhruva Maharaj, this is very great devotee, and he is on his way back to Godhead. He's so much on his way that they even sent an airplane, or it was even a small fleet of airplanes, because his mother got onto a different airplane. So it's not just his one, but there's at least 2 and maybe more airplanes that came from Vishnu Loka, from the place, from Vaikuntha, one of the Vaikuntha planets, on the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. When devotees go back to Godhead, of course there's so much talk of going back to Godhead, and different people who we encounter as we read Srimad Bhagavatam, they go back to Godhead, but not so many of them have an airplane sent so they can go back to Godhead, in sort of like very, very nicely. Somehow or other, others just go. Even in fact, in the 11th canto, at the end of the 11th canto, when Lord Krishna goes back to the spiritual world, he just goes himself. Surely that was his own idea, but it's just interesting. He just went himself and went flying away and flew past the planets of different demigods, and those demigods were watching as he was coming, and they thought, he's coming to visit me on my planet. Like this they were thinking. But he didn't stop on any of those planets. He just went flying past. And even there's a painting you may have seen in Srimad Bhagavatam of demigods sitting on planets, Lord Krishna flying through the air. Are you familiar with that picture? Yeah, that's illustrating that particular pastime of the Lord, how he just flew back to Godhead. But Dhruva, somehow or other, they make the Supreme Personality of Godhead makes special arrangement so he can go back to Godhead in great comfort, in style, so to speak. So death came, and as we read in the verse itself, that Dhruva, this airplane was big, so to get Dhruva had to sort of climb up to some degree to get onto the actual, where the people are located in the airplane. So death actually came for 2 reasons. One was just to provide a step to facilitate his stepping onto the plane. And the other, of course, Sri Radharanath Sri Giri Govardhan Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. So death was facilitating, serving Dhruva Maharaj, serving, offering his obeisances also, and trying to get some dust from the feet of the great pure devotee. This is one of the great interests of the serious devotees get some dust, get some mercy, get some dust, get some remnants of prasadam, maybe get some water which has washed the feet. These types of things are greatly appreciated by the devotees who are sort of in tune with how things work in Krishna consciousness. And of course, we know very well the story of Raghunath Das Goswami's uncle Kali Das. We don't have to go through the whole story, but he appreciated the devotees so much, and he felt so dependent on the mercy of the devotees that he made it his life's mission to just go out every day as we go every day to do our service of some sort, to manage the temple or to look after the deities, to serve the deities, or to cook for the deities or the devotees, etc., etc. Every one of us here in the Radharanath temple, we have our mission, means our prescribed service, to perform every day. If you don't, well, one of the first things I was told when I joined, which I've never seen any sort of record of, like recorded or anything, devotee said that Prabhupada said, if you want to cause distress to another devotee, take away their service. This is like the worst thing you can do to a devotee. Yeah. So we all have our services to perform every day, and we should hopefully be busy in the service of Shri Shri Radharanath, Giri Govardhan, Lord Chaitanya, Srila Prabhupada. We should really be busy all day and no time for just wasting. And Kalidas, he had his prescribed duty. Somehow he got, maybe he just decided himself. But it was to find devotees, find all the devotees, and somehow from them get some dust from their feet, or some water that's washed their feet, or some of their prasadam remnants, or maybe two or even all three, because he had such great respect for the devotees. And Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami describes in that chapter there that as a result of his such deeply held and deeply felt appreciation for the devotees and valuing the devotees, so he says that as a result, Kalidas got the supreme mercy of Lord Chaitanya. So death personified. He sort of has a bad name in another culture. They call him, what do they call him? The Reaper, the Great Reaper, or the Grim Reaper. And he's depicted like a really ghastly looking figure, some sort of animated skeleton or something, holding like a scythe or one of these instruments that for hand cutting grass, that sort of thing. But of course the idea is going to cut your head off. So he's not depicted as being any sort of sensitive devotee who's interested not just in killing you, but getting your mercy. in the process of assisting you leave your body. But death personified here, even like time, in Bhagavad Gita in the 11th chapter, the universal form, when the chapter's almost finished, the pastime, Krishna has shown the universal form, and now on the appeal of Arjuna, he's withdrawn it, first to the four-armed form, then to Krishna's sort of regular two-armed form. So after seeing all that and such a shocking and, thought-provoking experience, so Arjuna asks him, basically he says more or less, I thought I knew you because we've spent so much time together for years and years as friends, cousins, and so on like that. But now I see, having seen the universal form, I can see that I did not understand you, really. So he asks Lord Krishna, please tell me who you are. Tell me who you are and tell me what is your mission. So Lord Krishna answers, Kalosmi lokakshaya krit pravriddha. I am time, and I have come to engage everyone. And then he goes on in the same verse to say that except for you and your brothers, everyone else in this battle, on this battlefield, is going to be killed. In other words, by me, by Krishna, as time. So that is when Arjuna was seeing the universal form, first of all he saw some parts, which of course it's all very extreme and gigantic beyond any conception we could have. But still, initially, the universal form looks nice, garlanded and with jewelry and scented with very nice perfumes or scented oils like that. But then Lord Krishna shows the particular feature or the particular aspect of the universal form, which is the Kala Rupa, or the form of time. And that's when Arjuna becomes overwhelmed and it becomes too much for him completely. So then he sees the Kala Rupa devouring the soldiers. It's all very shocking. So anyway, we've read that many times before. So in other words, that's like death personified, you could say, the form of time. In his form as time. But here, we're hearing about death personified, and Prabhupada makes the point that Dhruva Maharaj suddenly saw death personified before him, but he was not afraid. And instead of death giving him trouble, being a challenge, a real obstacle to stop him, Dhruva took advantage so he could step up onto this big aeroplane, which otherwise, it appears, might have been more difficult to get onto. Yes, so he took advantage of death's presence. So, like this, Dhruva, in fact, is just about to die, you could say. I mean, actually, in sort of biological terms. He is actually dying. It's not anything else. Although, of course, it is mentioned shortly that his body, material body, gets transformed into a spiritual one. But otherwise, this is death, the time of death for him. But the thing is, as Prabhupada says, we read, he wasn't afraid, and for the advanced devotees, death is not fearful. Like Kadambakanana Maharaj, if you were following the whole development of things, someone expressed to him some sort of regretful type of mood, something of that sort, or like regretful or being sorry that it's painful and, along those lines. But Kadambakanana Maharaj, as we heard, more or less shrugged his shoulders and said, it's just a change of service. It's just a change of service in a different sort of physical environment. So don't, think it's some sort of big spectacle or something like that. So for the advanced devotees, death is an opportunity, actually, rather than sort of drag on here in the material world. If you're able to, in some sort of appropriate way, arrange that you leave your body before one might have expected it, then it's advantageous. And actually yesterday I was reading same 4th canto, but chapter 23 or 22, but I think it was 23. And there, Maharaj Prithu is going back to Godhead. But Prabhupada explains there that Maharaj Prithu, he, in the later stages at least, he engaged in some process of yoga, which the yogis do in order to allow you to have control of your death. That you could live longer if you want, or you could live shorter. So Prabhupada, it's explained there that the Maharaj Prithu, he decided, I want to go earlier. And so he installed his sons, 5 sons, as the rulers, and made other arrangements so the kingdom would be properly handled. And he went off with his wife. And he'd already got used to doing those yoga exercises. And it's 6 asanas that a person does, and by doing those 6, you elevate the kundalinis, like that, through different parts of your body, finally to between your eyes. And then from there, it goes, your life here goes to the crown of your head, and then you can just go from there. And you can go wherever you like. You can go back to Godhead, you can go to a heavenly planet, you can go where you like. Described there. So he wanted to do that, because he had all his duties in life he had taken care of, and everything was in good hands, and it would go on just like it had been when he was ruling. So why sit around like, some business people, I was told some maybe I shouldn't say it, but some Indian business people, the father or the husband, he develops the business. So it's a good, strong business. And then his sons, he hands it over to his sons. But what's he going to do? So he has an office upstairs, which only he uses. And what does he do in the office? He doesn't run the business. He reads the newspaper, drinks tea, and does things like that. And checks with his sons and like, everything okay? Yeah, it's okay. That's as far as it goes. He doesn't go into the details of the business. So Prithu Maharaj didn't want to be sort of unemployed, you could say. So he thought, right, he came from Vaikuntha with his mission. Now his mission is completed. Let's just go back to Vaikuntha. So he prepared to leave earlier. He was not an old man, sort of middle-aged or something like that. Yeah, so he did like that. He and his wife went as vanaprasthas into the forest, and interesting little thing which Prabhupada comments on, which I read, it was definitely yesterday. The verse says, one of the verses there says, Prithu Maharaj went to the forest alone. But then it says, which I think just before it says, he went with his wife alone, something like that. And so Prabhupada comments, what does this mean? It says he went with his wife. What does it mean he went alone? And Prabhupada makes the point that in these very traditional and very pure and highly elevated Krishna conscious Grihastha relationships, the husband and the wife are effectively one. Prabhupada explains. They're effectively one, and so therefore it was not a mistake or something to say that he went alone, although it also says he went with his wife. Yeah, so he went, and something very similar to Dhritarashtra with Gandhari, built some sort of straw hut somewhere, and then by some mystical power created fire, and his body was burnt, he passed away, and then as it's all burning, his wife, she also went into the fire and gave up her life. And that's what happened. Maharaj Prithu went back to Godhead. So not afraid of death, like it's some ghastly, most shocking and horrific and devastating thing. Not like that. Even Srila Vishnath Chakravarti Thakur mentions towards the end, almost right at the end of Madhurya Kadambini, that the very advanced devotees on the level of Krishna Prema, that it is not unusual at all that they're living in this world on the level of Prema and just completely absorbed in Krishna consciousness and devotional service in so many ways. But then, in the midst of all that, they die or they leave their bodies. But what he says is that in so many cases, they are so transcendental, they're so advanced in Krishna consciousness, they don't even notice when they leave their body. But just later on, at some point, a bit later on, they notice, oh, look, where did my body go? I'm in the other, the old one. I'm in a spiritual body now. Oh, my body must have died. But they're so transcendental, they didn't even notice it. In Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, verse 13, famous Dehinosmin Yata Dehe, there Lord Krishna says that the devotee goes through the changes of body and goes through the time of death, Dhiras Tatra Namuyate, and is not disturbed, is able to deal with the time of death without being disturbed. So that's one thing, to be able to tolerate whatever there is to tolerate as you go through that. But it's another thing to be so transcendental and Krishna conscious you don't even notice it happening at all. We can pray, perhaps, for that when the inevitable comes to all of us. Yeah. So, right. So this is what happened here then with Dhruva Maharaj, getting onto the airplane and with death personified, and therefore Srila Prabhupada says that the death of the devotee and the death of the non-devotee, we should know the difference. We shouldn't think they're the same. And Prabhupada gives the example, famous example he's given many times, like a cat carries her kitten in her mouth, and the kitten feels that this is like the safest position, where my mother, I'm just completely under the protection and supervision of my mother. But then the cat also catches the rat or the mouse in her mouth, and for them it's death. So that's the difference Prabhupada's giving between the death of the devotee, or passing away of a devotee, and the passing away of a materialist. Then Srila Prabhupada goes on to make some comments about the modern day scientists and people like that, technical manufacturers, aeronautical people, that, of course, I think we've all been on aeroplanes. Some of us used to almost live on aeroplanes. And so you know what an airplane is like, particularly in economy class. One time, one devotee was telling me on Indian Airlines, not Air India, but Indian Airlines, they overbooked, and there were 2 people with boarding passes for the one seat. So someone had a sort of, what would you say, like one of these little beach chair sort of things, with metal tubing or something with some canvas, and pulled it out, and they put that person at the back on this chair. I mean, that's sub-economy class. Just like in India on the trains, they used to have third class reserved. So you get a place. But then there was third class unreserved. Means just people just pile on, and that's it. And once it's interesting to have experiences of different things in life. So a whole group of us, we went from Puri to Calcutta. We had to catch a plane from Calcutta the next morning. So we went in third class, unreserved, from Puri to Calcutta overnight, and two of us ended up in the luggage rack. There wasn't room to stand. Forget about seating and sleeping. Yeah, so we were scrunched up. So that's what it's like here. Even you travel on a plane, business class or maybe first class, where there's a lot more facility and a lot more space. And even in some planes, you can have a shower on the plane. But it doesn't compare at all with this Vaikuntha airplane, which Dhruva Maharaj is getting into, or Prabhupada mentions the plane of Kardama Muni for Devahuti, which we read about. We read about in the third canto. That was really complete with lakes, gardens, parks, palaces, and all sorts of just facilities. And like skyscraper, which flew. And it didn't just fly, it could hover. Even the most advanced airplanes, which, like passenger planes, they can't hover. Yeah. And they can't travel interplanetarily. But Kardama Muni's one did. So they flew all over the universe and stopped here and there. So Srila Prabhupada is, pointing out the fact that compared to how people traveled, like 150 years ago or something like that, now the airplanes may be considered to be a great advancement over having, if you need to go to India, you have to get on a boat, and it takes weeks to get there. But now you can get there in hours. Yes. So that's an advancement in a sense, but compared to these airplanes, actually our scientific people and industrial people, etc., they are not advanced at all, really. They're more advanced than some, but they're not actually advanced as people in the real Vedic civilizations. Yes. So anyway, like this, Dhruva getting onto the airplane, and death personified is thinking that, well, I got the mercy today. I really got the mercy. Hare Krishna. Any comments or questions? Swarup Damodar Prabhu.
Prabhupada very nicely saying that the difference, we cannot equate the dying of a non-devotee to that of a devotee. Because the devotee has the experience of the kitten in its mother's love. So how does a devotee, when death may be coming in the form of some illness, some extreme illness, or some sort of danger, when does the devotee decide to not fight it, to give up, stop for any remedy or cure, and just let it go? Because sometimes if you just give up, it may be seen as irresponsible. At the same time, it may be seen as avoiding the vegetable. So, which point do we say, okay, let's just embrace this?
Yes, right. Well, different devotees have different approaches. I mean, have had. Like even Narmada Swami, he decided not just to, well, I mean, it was the same sort of decision, but he decided to just stop eating. And I guess drinking, but definitely eating. And that's what happened. He passed away in a matter of, I'm not sure, but just a few weeks. Others like Kadambakanana Maharaj, when he was diagnosed, I guess here, right, that he made that sort of decision. And that's what he did, in fact. But others, they, like even Srila Prabhupada, he took some medical treatments as the time was coming. So, I mean, how can we judge Srila Prabhupada? But, it was more just reciprocating with the desires of the devotees to help, try to help him. But, so, a good idea would be, when it's clear that the situation is terminal and there's actually no way back, sometimes, may not, I'm sure it's not clear many times actually, but when it really becomes clear, then the devotee should, with assistance, make a strategy which would vary from devotee to devotee, we assume, of how to deal with it. Like all GBC members, and it's coming to all sannyasis in due course, and it may reach all the temple presidents in due course. They have to fill out a form of what do you want done when you reach that point where it's truly the point of no return. Do you want, or like you become incapable? Yeah. What do you want? Do you want ongoing medical treatment or nothing? But I would say that, in really practical terms at least, when a devotee comes to that point where, it's one thing to hope, and it's another thing to hope against hope, but it's another thing when it's just completely clear that it's not possible to continue. At that point, a devotee should make decisions, at least at that point, maybe before, but at least to make decisions like that. But it might involve, sort of giving yourself over to Krishna, but trying to do it in such a way that the physical pain is, kind of reduced a bit, maybe. What would you say?
Sometimes I feel that some secular devotees, they may choose, this is it. If others around them and you feel, no, I'm going to fight the pressure. And sometimes, quite often, I am involved in being asked the question, well, what should be done in this case? kind of feeling of it seems to be a hopeless case. But the person really wants to hold on. It's such a touchy, delicate point.
Yeah.
Of giving the advice of an emotionally hurt person and even hurt the people around them.
And it might be wrong
It
too.
may be wrong also. So, and like Prabhupada said, at the bombs were falling in Calcutta, he wasn't afraid. He said, I'm seeing Krishna coming in the form of these bombs. It's such a deep realization of the power.
Well, you know one thing, in the beginning of the 10th canto, where Vasudeva and Devaki are being taken by Kamsa, and then Kamsa turns on Devaki, there is at least one verse which makes it clear that it is sinful or negligent to not protect your body from death, if death, is right there. So, therefore, Vasudeva, he could have been philosophical and said, well, such is life. I mean, he couldn't fight. They would both be dead. But no, he understood it was his duty to protect his wife. Of course, she's young. But in general, the principle is there. We're meant to look after our bodies. Yeah. Because they're not our bodies. They're Krishna's bodies. And, at least as long as they're able to do some form of service, that should be, should be done.
Someone attacked him, what would he do? I would defend myself, I would fight. Why should I let some rascal damage Krishna's property?
Right. Okay. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. I think my hat maybe fell under the seat because I took it off when I came here. And I think I put it here, but it may have fallen off. Sorry? Oh, thank you for reminding me. Okay, remind me again at lunchtime or... Okay, thank you. Debo. Hare Krishna. You were missed.